Noblewoman Elizabeth Bathory is viewed as the most notorious sequential executioner in Hungarian/Slovak history. Gossipy tidbits had flowed for a considerable length of time about missing laborer young ladies, offered generously compensated work at the stronghold, they were gone forever. One of these bits of gossip arrived at the ears of King Matthias II, who sent a gathering of men to the huge castle Ksejth. The men discovered one young lady dead and one biting the dust. Another was discovered injured and others bolted up. Depicted monstrosities, gathered from declaration of witnesses, incorporate serious beatings over broadened time frames, the utilization of needles, consuming or mutilation of hands, some of the time additionally of countenances and genitalia, gnawing the substance off the faces, arms and other real parts, and the destitute of casualties. The casualty all out is thought to number in the hundreds, happening over a quarter-century time span. Because of her economic well-being she was never brought to preliminary, however stayed under house capture in a solitary room until her demise. The possibility that the Countess washed in the blood of her casualties is old stories, and one of only a handful, scarcely any things she didn't do. You can peruse increasingly about Elizabeth Bathory on Mythverse, our sister site, for exposing misconceptions. The principal Australian lady to be condemned to a characteristic life term without any chance to appeal, Katherine Knight, had a background marked by brutality. Seeing someone, she crushed the false teeth of one of her exes and cut the throat of another spouse's 8-week-old little dog before his eyes. A warmed relationship with John Charles Thomas Price became open information with an apprehended violence order that Price had documented against Knight, and finished with Knight cutting Price to death with a butcher's blade. He had been cut in any event multiple times, both front and back, with a significant number of the injuries entering indispensable organs. She at that point cleaned him and hung his suit from the door jamb in the family room, removed his head and put it in the soup pot, heated his bum, and arranged sauce and vegetables to go with the cook. The feast and a noxious note were set out for the kids, fortunately found by police before they showed up home. Another result of the Nazis' last arrangement, Irma Grese, or the Bitch of Belsen, was a watchman at inhumane imprisonments Ravensbrück, Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. Moved to Auschwitz in 1943, she was elevated to senior supervisor, the second most noteworthy positioning female in camp, before the year's over. Responsible for more than 30,000 Jewish female detainees, she delighted in her work. Her work included savaging of detainees by her prepared and half-starved pooches, sexual overabundances, subjective shootings, perverted beatings with a plated whip, and choosing detainees for the gas chamber. She delighted in both physical and passionate torment, and constantly wore substantial boots and conveyed a gun to encourage both. Pass on Hexe von Buchenwald, the Witch of Buchenwald, or Buchenwalderschlamp. The Bitch of Buchenwald was the spouse of Karl Koch, commandant of the inhumane imprisonments Buchenwald from 1937 to 1941, and Majdanek from 1941 to 1943. Tanked on the total force rendered by her better half, she delighted in torment and vulgarity. Notorious for her trinkets, tattoos taken from the killed detainees, her notoriety for intemperance was all around earned. In the wake of building an indoor games field in 1940, with 250,000 imprints taken from prisoners, Ilse was elevated to Oberaufseherin, or boss manager of the couple of female gatekeepers at Buchenwald. She ended it all by hanging herself at Eichach Ladies' Jail on September 1, 1967. Englishwoman Mary Ann Cotton is another revenue-driven sequential executioner, originating before Belle Guns by 30 years. Hitched at age 20 to William Mowbray, the lovebirds settled in Plymouth, Devon, to begin their family. The couple had 5 kids, 4 of whom kicked the bucket of gastric fever and stomach torments. Moving back toward the northeast, catastrophe appeared to tail them. 3 additional youngsters conceived, 3 additional kids kicked the bucket. William before long followed his posterity, passing on of an intestinal turmoil in January 1865. English Prudential expeditiously delivered a £35 profit, and an example was built up. Her subsequent spouse, George Ward, passed on of intestinal issues just as one of her 2 residual youngsters. The intensity of the press, consistently a power to be dealt with, found Mary Ann. The nearby papers found that as Mary Ann moved around northern England, she lost 3 spouses, a sweetheart, a companion, her mom, and 12 youngsters, all withering of stomach fever. She was hanged at Durham County Jail, March 24, 1873, for homicide by arsenic harming. She kicked the bucket gradually, the executioner utilizing too short a drop for a spotless execution. Beauty Gunness was one of America's generally degenerate and gainful female sequential executioners. Standing 6 feet, 1.83 m, tall and tipping the scales at more than 200 pounds, 91 kilograms, she was a forcing and influential lady of Norwegian drop. All things considered, she killed both her spouses and every last bit of her youngsters at various occasions, yet it is sure that she killed the vast majority of her admirers, sweethearts, and her 2 little girls, Myrtle and Lucy. The intention was insatiability, straightforward as can be, life coverage strategies and resources taken or cheated from her admirers turned into her wellspring of pay. Most reports put her loss of life at an excess of 20 casualties, more than quite a few years, with some asserting more than 100. Irregularities during her after-death assessment. The body was accounted for to be 2 inches shorter than Belle's 6 feet, prepared for Belle Guns to enter American criminal old stories, a female Bluebeard. The Holy Messenger of Death, Beverly Allitt, is one of Britain's most notable sequential executioners. Filling in as a pediatric medical caretaker, she is liable for the homicide of 4 youngsters and the genuine injury of 5 others in her consideration. At the point when accessible, insulin or potassium infusions were utilized to encourage heart failure, covering did the trick when they were definitely not. Despite the fact that indicted with death or injury in 9 cases, Allitt assaulted 13 youngsters over a 50 multi-day time frame before being caught in the act. Allitt has never discussed the intention in her violations, yet Munchausen's syndrome by proxy clarifies her activities. This easily proven wrong character issue includes an example of misuse or damage to somebody in your consideration so as to accumulate consideration. Isabella I of Spain, notable as the supporter of Christopher Columbus, with her better half Ferdinand II of Aragon, are answerable for making conceivable the unification of Spain under their grandson Carlos I. As a major aspect of the drive for unification, Isabella selected Tomás de Torquemada as the principal inquisitor general of the examination. Walk 31, 1492 imprints the usage of the Alhambra decree, ejection orders constraining the evacuation or transformation of Jews and Muslims. Approximately 200,000 individuals left Spain, those outstanding who picked change were accordingly mistreated by the probe-researching Judaizing conversos. In 1974, Pope Paul VI opened her motivation for beatification. This places her on the way toward conceivable sainthood. In the Catholic Church, she is along these lines titled Servant of God. Myra Hindley and Ian Brady were liable for the Fields murders happening in the Manchester territory of Britain in the mid-1960s. Together these 2 beasts were liable for the abducting, sexual maltreatment, torment and murder of 3 kids younger than 12 and 2 youngsters, matured 16 and 17. A key found in Myra's ownership prompted implicating proof put away at a left-gear warehouse at Manchester Central Station. The proof incorporated a copying of one of the homicide casualties shouting as Hindley and Brady assaulted and tormented her. In the last days before detainment, she built up a strut and egotistical demeanor that turned into her trademark. Police Secretary Sandra Wilkinson has always remembered seeing Hindley and her mom Nellie, inclining toward the town hall eating desserts. While the mother was clearly and naturally agitated, Hindley appeared to be detached and cold-hearted of her circumstance. Mary was the lone offspring of Henry VIII and Katherine of Aragon to live past early stages. Delegated after the passing of Edward VI and the expulsion of the 9 days Queen Lady Jane Grey, Mary is essentially associated with incidentally and fiercely returning England to Catholicism. Numerous noticeable Protestants were executed for their convictions, prompting the moniker tomato juice and vodka. Dreading the hangman's tree, a further 800 Protestants left the nation, incapable to return until her demise. It ought to be noticed that Elizabeth I shares position 10 on this rundown for her similarly awful conduct. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.